Hello and welcome back. My name is Charlie Knowles. I'm the president and the co-founder of the Wildlife Conservation Network. And I want to welcome you to this session on surviving during trying times. And fortunately, joining us today is the world's leading purveyor of hope, Dr. Jane Goodall. Jane and I have been friends for over 20 years. She was instrumental in the founding of WCN. She's joined us at over 10 expos over the years. I've had the great privilege of traveling with her and watching sandhill cranes and drinking a whiskey or two over the years. But before we start, to add perspective to this discussion, I'm going to ask Sheila Funnell to join us. Sheila is the Director of Impact and Operations at Grevy Zebra Trust, who will actually be speaking next. Sheila has a master's in taxonomy and biodiversity. She was named the CNN Changemaker. And I think one of the greatest things about Sheila, one of the coolest things actually, is that when she was doing field work in Madagascar, she discovered a species of gecko long thought extinct, which is very cool. So thank you, Sheila, for joining us. And you're joining us from Minuki, is that correct?
Yeah, I'm in Nanyuki, sort of central Kenya, and I'm so excited to be joining both of you today, both you, Charlie, and Jane. I've really admired Jane's work growing up, not just as a leader for women in science, but also because she has so openly shared her experiences and stories with the world, and I know I've personally drawn strength from those experiences, especially in my career in conservation. So thank you so much for having me.
Well, thank you for joining us. You bring a unique perspective from your work in Kenya, and not only how climate change and the biodiversity crisis is impacting your work, but actually the work you're doing to reverse that. So thank you for that. And obviously our guest of honor needs no introduction. She's a scientist, an activist, a friend, and author of the soon-to-be-released book, The Book of Hope, a survival guide for trying times, Dr. Jane Goodall. Hello, Jane.
Hi, Charlie, and hello, Sheila.
Hi, Jane.
Well, lovely to see you. The last time we were going to talk, Jane, you lost your voice, and you do so many of these interviews. We really appreciate you taking your time, and I wonder if you would share with the audience what Dr. Jane's prescription is for a lost voice recovery.
Whiskey.
Good. Well,
nobody believes me.
Well,
and I simply said to them, what do you do when your voice gets really tired, overused? All four said whiskey.
Nice. Well, I think that's a prescription for a lot of what ails us these days. So, well, let's get right into it. Unfortunately, we only have half an hour to chat today. So, with all the problems facing the world, from the pandemic, social unrest, climate change, the biodiversity crisis, fires, how can we still be hopeful?
Well, obviously, that's a question I'm asked all the time. And, Jane, do you really have hope? And I always have to qualify it. I have hope if, but only if, we can get together now to face these challenges. But the great thing about hope is if we don't have hope, if we lose hope, then this will be the end. Because if you don't have hope, then you sink into apathy and do nothing. What's the point? But my definition of hope is not just wishful thinking. It's not, oh, well, it's bound to come out all right in the end. It's hope that requires action. And I was just today, actually, I was thinking it's as though we're in a dark tunnel, but right at the end of that tunnel is a little gleam of light, and that's hope. And we may stumble over many obstacles. We may meet obstacles that seem insurmountable, but we're determined to reach that light. That is hope. And I'll only be quick here because we don't have long to talk. But my four main reasons for hope. First of all, you know, we are beginning to use this brain. The one thing that makes us most different from other animals, who are, by the way, way more intelligent than we used to think. But, you know, I mean, well, we're speaking from the US, from the UK, and Kenya and Yuki, and that's pretty amazing. That's just one example of what the human brain has done. And finally, science is beginning to come up with innovative solutions to slow down climate change, like moving on to renewable energy, for example. And if we can just get governments to subsidize renewable energy, we could really make a big difference. And as individuals, people are beginning to understand that we do have a role to play, each one of us. And if everybody lives during every day trying to make a lighter ecological footprint, and of course, some people can do way more than others, then that moves us towards a better world. And I just thought it's like crowdfunding. You have a child desperate for medical help that you can't possibly get the money. So you put out a little appeal. People give $2, $5, $10, $1, and suddenly there you are, you have the money. So that's a good sort of example. Well, then, secondly, there's the resilience of nature. And I'm sure, Sheila, you've heard about the the quarry in Kenya that was resuscitated and restored itself from where is it now? It's somewhere on the Kenya coast. Anyway, can't remember it. Anyway, we can if we give nature time, a place that we've utterly destroyed can be reclaimed, can once again support life, not exactly as it was before, but it can once again uh, support some biodiversity. And animals on the very brink of extinction are being given another chance. We've seen examples of that all the time. And then, thirdly, and really my greatest reason for hope is young people. And you know, Charlie, we have this Roots and Shoots program. Maybe Sheila, you've heard of it too. Although we're having problems getting it going in Kenya. It's all over Tanzania. And it's in 65 countries now. So it's growing fast. And it's involving young people in doing projects which they choose to help people, to help animals, to help environment. And the main message is every one of us makes an impact every day. And so by partnering with other youth groups with similar missions, we're making a big difference. The young people are making a big difference. Their energy, their commitment, their determination. And then finally, what I call the indomitable spirit that we have, the people who tackle what seems absolutely impossible and they won't give up. And very often they succeed. And even if they don't succeed in their lifetime, they inspire others to carry on. If it's the right kind of uh, goal that you're aiming for, maybe you discover, no, I've made a mistake, then switch and use that same indomitable spirit to move in another direction. And you know, the key thing is every one of us has an indomitable spirit. It's just that some people keep it trapped. They don't let it out. They're afraid, they're nervous, they're apathetic, or whatever it is. But those those four are the main reasons. There's others, but those are the main ones.
Thank you so much, Jane, for sharing that. I think it's so inspiring to hear. And I think for me, what really grabbed me within those four reasons was here in Kenya. I think I've experienced that professionally, I've experienced it personally. And I just want to highlight one example. You know, we work a lot in northern Kenya where we're really, our primary goal really is to restore grasslands. And, you know, we've been working towards this for years. And in some areas that we work in, the land is completely bare. So, you know, we've seen the indomitable human spirit come into play because we've seen women, for example, taking action, you know, and where we haven't really had as much impact for a while, you know, now we're seeing impact because women are really taking initiative and working to heal rangelands. And because of what they're doing, they're also inspiring others, you know, so it's that sort of one woman that's now inspiring others. And now there's elders, there's warriors, there's children, you know, sort of coming together, and they're planting grass seed, they're digging the ground, they're making bunds, they're capturing rainwater. You know, and then I think that's also a really good example of the resilience of nature because it is coming back. We really work to protect and conserve Grevy's zebra, and grass is growing for this species. You know, so I think a lot of us really have hope because we've seen it in action based on these 4 principles that you've just highlighted. So I wonder if within that, is there anything that particularly stands out to you, for example, with the indomitable human spirit? Is there an example or something that you draw strength from sort of in this quest, or when you have hope?
Well, in the general quest for hope, you know, I think that there are these icons like Nelson Mandela, and at one time it seemed hopeless to fight in South Africa for apartheid. First place I landed when I came out to Africa in 1957, Cape Town, and it was beautiful until I saw on the backs of the seats and doors to the restaurants this Afrikaans Slechts Blanc. I said, what does it mean? White people only. Well, I wasn't brought up that way. And, you know, I don't judge people by the color of their skin, their language, or their religion either. And so I couldn't wait to leave Cape Town. But anyway, Nelson Mandela, working with de Klerk, brought it to an end. Then there were the long struggles of Martin Luther King Jr. And then when you think of the incredible people who overcome physical disabilities, that you think, well, if that happened to me, that would be the end. I mean, I know this Canadian, and his name is Chris Cock. He was born with no arms and no legs. I mean, he's got his got little stumps of arms. They're quite thin, rather like a wrist. Imagine a wrist with a stump at the end coming out of your shoulder. And one, it's almost, I suppose it's a foot that comes out of his thigh. He's been around Europe on his own on a skateboard. He drives a multi-million-dollar tractor. There's nothing he doesn't do. And when I said to him, last time I met him, I said, well, Chris, have they offered you prosthetic arms or legs? He said, yeah, they have. And I did try them. But, you know, he said, I think I was put together this way for a reason. So I think I'll stay as I am. And then with a little twinkle, he said, but I might take them up on it when I decide to climb Mount Everest.
That's so amazing to hear. That's so inspiring. And it's those sort of individuals, and it's global. You can find those individuals everywhere and really draw from that strength. So thank you so much for sharing that.
And picking up on another one of your themes, Jane, in terms of the power of youth, we have thousands of people joining us today, many of whom are young and interested in getting into the field of wildlife conservation. And this will actually be a question for both Jane and Sheila. So if you were a youth today and you wanted to get involved in wildlife conservation, how would you propose going about it? And I'll ask you first, Jane.
Well, you know what I'm going to say, Charlie.
Oh.
Join Roots and Shoots. You'll then be with a whole lot of other young people who have the same kind of desire as you. You can talk with each other. There's information out there on places you can go. I might also tell them to go to Expo next year, because there they'll meet so many conservationists who are so inspiring and who might give them ideas. But I always say to the young people, well, first of all, you've got to be absolutely sure that's what you want to do, because it's challenging, it's tough, funding isn't easy to get. So you've got to really know. So try and volunteer, maybe when you leave school for a gap year, to see if it really is for you. I think that's important.
Yeah. And could you, Jane, give us an example of how Roots and Shoots works, and say, my boys are 10, they're in fourth grade. If they wanted to get involved in Roots and Shoots, how would they do that, and what would it look like?
I'm shocked that they're not involved in
They
Roots.
are.
Okay, I thought they were. Well, actually, all you need to do, we do like groups to register, doesn't cost anything, just because we have now organized globally. So in all 65 countries, we're sharing the information of the different groups. But basically, all you have to do is to sit down with a couple of friends, with a teacher, with a parent, and think, what do I care about? What can I do to help the world today? And I always find in a group there's some kids who want to help animals, volunteering in a shelter or raising money for certain wildlife restoration projects. There's some kids who want to help the environment, who want to pick up trash, who want to recycle and teach their parents how to behave, that sort of thing. And then there's always some who want to help people, who care about orphans or homeless and that sort of thing. So you just decide what to do, and then you work out how you might help, and then you roll up your sleeves and take action. It's all about action, action, action. And, so each member doesn't have to do all three things, but they need to share what they do because it's all interrelated. I learned that in the rainforest.
Fantastic. And Sheila, someone who has done it recently, can you give some advice to youth that want to get involved in wildlife conservation?
Yeah, but to be honest, as Jane has just described it, I think is the complete process that I went through, volunteering. But I think for me, it was, persistence, and also, I think, passion. I grew up in Kenya, and I love the country. I love the land. I love the wildlife. I love the people. I love everything, so there was a very strong sort of need internally to continue to make the country better, or continue to work here. So I think that sort of persistence, that passion needs to be there. As Jane said, try it for a year. I did that. I worked in Madagascar for a while, and at the end of that, I knew that this is exactly what I wanted to be doing. And I think I was also very fortunate in that there are organizations out there that are searching. They're looking for people. They're looking for young people to sort of take up that mantle. We always talk about, the next generation. Really, that generation is here working and is active now. So the opportunities are out there. It's just sort of drawing on the experience that you built for yourself and that passion.
And Sheila, I'd love to talk to you a little bit more about Roots and Shoots, because maybe we could collaborate, and then your young people would have the world. They can just reach out to any country in the world and find people who think like they do and want to help save the world.
Yeah, that would be amazing. And I think, and one of the things that you just mentioned there is being able to reach out to the world and know that there is a community out there. I had a discussion actually just the other day with Belinda, who's the director for Grevy's Ever Trust. And we were just talking about how important it is to have community, to know that there's a network out there that you can draw on for support. And I think having Roots and Shoots sort of operating here and being able to draw on that global network, I think would have a huge difference. So I would love to talk to you more about that. I think it would be amazing.
This is what WCN and the Expo is all about. It's making these connections. I didn't expect this to be the particular connection, but it's fantastic.
I was just going to say, Charlie, that's your job, but it's my job too, making connections and giving people hope.
Yeah.
And what you said, Sheila, it is so true. If you feel depressed and the world's going to whatever the expression is, um, if you think about one local thing you can do and you get down and do it, and you find that you are making a difference, you and your friends, um, that gives you more hope and you do more. And by doing more, as you say, you inspire others. And it becomes a sort of upward going spiral of adding more and more hope as you go.
Yes, entirely. And I think, we've sort of seen it with climate change. We've seen that movement. We've seen youth holding governments accountable for the future, for the world that we're living in now. And, I've seen it. I'm part of the youth conservation leaders here in Africa. And I see it on a daily basis, whether it's through litter picking, whether it's through staging a march. It's just young people coming out and doing something that they are passionate about. And it's making a difference. So I think that it really is, the youth really are a source of hope for the world, definitely.
But we need the wisdom of the elders too. Think of some of the shamans in the rainforest and the wisdom they've brought with them generation after generation. And so these indigenous people, like all around Gombe and the forest, they know the plants, they know the animals. And when, that breakthrough came, Jane saw chimpanzees using and making tools. We thought humans were the only creatures that could use and make tools. We were man, the tool maker. Well, if you'd bothered to go and ask indigenous people living deep in the rainforest in Congo, they could tell you chimpanzees use and make tools because they've seen it. I've asked them. So, there's all that wisdom and we need to draw from it.
Oh.
Yeah, completely. Sorry, go ahead, Charlie.
No, Sheila, please.
Well, I was just going to say, sorry, there's so many different, sort of aspects of work here in Northern Kenya that when you're discussing these different things, I'm sort of able to draw on. I had a conversation with Resson from Ewaso Lions a while ago, and we were talking about the power of the knowledge of elders within sort of Northern Kenya, and that knowledge is, we're drawing on that knowledge to implement our grassland restoration techniques in the conservancies that we are working in. And so the techniques that that GZT is sort of putting on the ground, they're not new, but it really is drawing on that knowledge from the past to inform what's happening now. And also we're finding that to be a really, a huge strength in actually helping us achieve some of what we want to achieve.
Yeah, we've got to get all the young people involved in banning factory farming, banning monocultures, banning industrial agriculture that's killing the soil, and we're losing biodiversity so fast because of it. And it's just so important. We've got to ban this wildlife trade, which in part was responsible, well, in a very major role it plays in these zoonotic diseases. We're told 75% of all newly emerging human diseases are zoonotic in origin, either from the wildlife trade, moving deeper into the forest, or in the factory farms where these billions of animals are crammed into unhygienic and cruel conditions. Many diseases have started there.
Well, you talk about the role of elders, and we have several thousand people who are joining us today who are a little bit more like me, sporting a little bit of gray. I got some gray.
Oh, a tiny bit.
More and more every day, I'm afraid. But my follow-on question is, to that, Jane, is what would you say to the existing elders in terms of their role and what they can and should be doing?
So you're just talking about older people per se.
Yes, yeah, living in the United States and UK, and
Yep. Well, you know, a lot of them are actually being changed by their children. There's no question. I meet parent after parent who says, "Well, I never used to think about what I was buying, but now my kids just make me, so I've become a different shopper than I used to be." But you know, I've met many CEOs and government people, and I've met climate change deniers. I can't do much with the far right Trump supporters because they don't listen, they don't want to listen, and it's hardly any use bothering with them, although I always would if I was given the chance. But just for an ordinary person who thinks differently, I find that to confront them, to argue with them, to point fingers at them, to tell them that they've got to change, they'll probably turn off. They don't want to be told those things. But you've got to reach the heart because I honestly think people change from within. So I do that by telling stories. And I'll tell you a wonderful story. The other day I was talking to the CEO of a big corporation in Singapore. And he said, "Well, Jane, my corporation, my business has changed for three reasons. One, uh, we see the writing on the wall. We see that if we go on uh, violating all our natural resources at the speed we are, then these resources are finite, and that'll be the end of our business because we'll use them up. In some places, that's happened. Secondly, we have to change because consumer pressure is mounting. More people want ethically produced goods. More people care about fair wages and whether it's harmed the environment and, of course, the cruelty to animals. But he said, the final thing that made me change just like that, he said, my little girl came back from school about 5 years ago and she was about 10. She said, Daddy, is what you're doing hurting the environment? Because people tell me that you're hurting the environment, and that's what I'm going to be living in when I grow up.
hmm,
And that just went straight to my heart.
yeah, no, that's the power of youth in that messaging, and you see it across the WCN partners and the role that education plays, and how often that comes back to the elders in the community. So it's very, very powerful. Um, well, unfortunately, we're running up against time, but I don't know if Sheila, you have a closing question or comment for Jane?
Yeah, I do. I think um, the messages around hope are so strong, but I think it would be so nice to sort of close on what that vision is for the future. So if you could describe your vision for what you want, what you think the planet should be, you know, in the future. What would that be? And I think that that would be so nice for everyone watching, for me to share with my sons, you know, that this is a collective goal that we are working towards.
Well, my vision for the future is there's a great deal more rewilding, so corridors linking different conservation areas, wildlife areas. That people are learning that they're part of and depend on the natural world, and that we cannot go on destroying it, and they're finding ways that we can live in harmony with the natural world and not get upset if we suddenly see some wild animal in our garden. We've got to accept that it's their right to be there and find ways with dealing with that. Uh, we've got to we've got to green our cities. We've got to bring nature into the cities. We've got to ensure that all young children have a chance of outdoor education so they can actually explore nature and understand it and then they'll want to protect it when they get older. But too many kids today, they're in an inner city, they're spending all the time on their cell phones, video games, and so on. They're not learning to understand nature at all. So greening in the city, I think, is very, very important. And that people learn to live in harmony with each other. And until we can protect nature, protect the natural world, and live in harmony with nature, we'll never live in harmony with each other, because already people are competing for water in some places because it's getting scarcer, competing for access to land because it's being used up by megacities. And finally, we need to think a bit more about population. And you know as well as I do, Sheila, and Charlie, you know as well, that all around the world, as women's education improves, family size tends to drop. And we've certainly found that around Gombe, because, when I first got there in 1960, an average family was 8 to 10 or more. But these people now understand, even in the most remote villages, they've somehow understood that education for their children is a way out of poverty. But they can't afford to educate 8 to 10 children anymore. So we provide them with family planning information, and they eagerly receive it. Because, right now there's 7.5 plus billion of us. And already in some places we're using up natural resources. In 2050, there's going to be closer to 10 billion. So something's got to happen. We've got to do things differently. We can't carry on with business as usual. We need a new, more sustainable economy. And as I say, we need to live in harmony with the natural world and welcome it into our lives.
Thank you so much,
Thank
Jane. I
you.
think that was, that really captured it. And I think that's a vision that I want to share with my children and my family and my friends. So thank you.
Well, it's a wonderful vision to end on. Sheila, I want to thank you for joining us. Thank you for your work. Everyone can just stay on this stage because you'll learn more about Grevy Zebra Trust and their work and hear from Sheila immediately after this. And of course, Jane, I want to thank you for everything. Thank you on behalf of the audience for all you do, the inspiration, and for the hope. And one of my hopes is that next year we can do this in person, and share a little whiskey afterwards. So thank you both so much, and see you soon.